You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 107.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and love, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Vias.
So we're going to be talking about two elephants in the room. One is I'm recording in a different place. You're going to probably hear some ambient noise. So thank you so much for staying with me through this. And the second is I'm doing an episode on Santa Claus. And it's all going to tie back together about breaking the cycle, breaking the patterns in your relationships. And I've done a few episodes on traditions and how you can the past episodes were more about rethinking traditions, and this is another way that I'm going to be talking about that. And if you want to go back, it's episode number 10 where I talk about love traditions. And this is going to be about a process to think through your traditions. Because if you think about it, when you're trying to break patterns, a lot of them come from years, maybe from our childhood, from the past generation, from our parents. And we kind of need a process, I think, to think through it, to bring up some of those unconscious beliefs that we may have. And so that's why it's going to be really great to talk about this. Yes, I'm going to be talking about it in terms of Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, or Father Christmas. And it's going to be applicable to any kind of tradition that you have maybe been taught in your childhood, how to kind of rethink it. And the point is for you to rethink it for yourself. I've done this process for myself with my traditions, for my family. And when you go through this process, you're not going to end up doing what I do. And that's so great because it'll allow you to find your own wisdom and your answers to how you want to go about having those traditions. It can even be small traditions like your birthday party all the way up to a religious tradition. And so that's what you're going to get in this episode. And I also have a blog post, and the link will be in the show notes. So I'll have kind of the process if you want to refer back to it. And the reason why I am doing Santa Claus, because it is something that comes up with fellow parents, people that I coach, but also other moms that I know that it comes up for them. And also, I wasn't raised Christian, but I'm married to somebody who is Christian. So it's kind of something I've had to really think through. And I spent some time organizing the process based on what I've read on traditions. And so I'm going to share with you how to kind of think through the Santa Claus myth. And I'm calling that because it's about reevaluating what we've been told so that you can come up with an answer as maybe how to explain it to the next generation in your own way. So first up, I'm going to talk about traditions. And there's two big things to understand about traditions that we sometimes don't get. It needs to maybe be brought to the front of our mind, is that traditions is actually for the future, for the next generation. It's not actually about the past. It is about the continuity of the past into the future. So when we think of traditions, it is actually for the next generation. That is why we involve young children into our rituals, into our ceremonies, because we want that past to continue into the future. So whenever we think about traditions, it is actually for the next generation. And the second important thing to remember about traditions is that there's actually two elements to it. There's the purpose and the form. The purpose is why we do it. So it's a reason why we are gathering or celebrating this tradition, this custom. And then there's the form, which is about how we go about it. So if you think about various different weddings, the form would be the venue, the people that you invite, the type of dress the bride wears, all of those elements that we tend to maybe focus on a little bit is going to be the form. And the important thing to note is that it's the form technically should be created based on your purpose. So you reevaluate your purpose of why are you holding this tradition to then create the form. And I talk a lot more about it in episode 10. I'm not going to go so much into it, but this is going to be really important as I talk through the Santa myth, because it is for the next generation. And there's a lot of confusion that happens around the purpose and then the form. And the form in this case of Santa Claus is how we talk about Santa Claus to the next generation or, among adults, etc. So here are some common reasons that have come up for kind of rethinking Santa Claus that I've heard from parents and I have questioned myself. So one of the big reasons, I don't want my children to think someone else gave them these gifts when it was my hard-earned money. So basically, why should Santa Claus get the credit when I've actually paid for those gifts? A second reason is I don't want to lose trust with my children because I would be lying to them about who Santa Claus is, that today he doesn't exist. The third reason is I don't want to break their hearts when they find out the truth. They'll be so disappointed. They'll be so devastated and crushed. And the fourth common reason is that Santa Claus perpetuates the idea that the white man is the savior, the white man is the generous giver. Now, the fourth reason, I am actually going to do a follow-up episode. So this is a two-part series. So in the next episode, you're going to want to stay tuned next week because I'm going to be talking about Santa Claus and race. And so I'm going to cover the first three reasons. One is Santa's getting the credit when I'm actually paying, I'm lying to my child, and how they will feel when they find out the truth about Santa Claus. And if you have another reason that you're reevaluating Santa Claus and maybe you don't want to continue the story that you've been told with your family or in your environment, this process is going to apply as well. So whatever reason you have that I didn't list, it's going to work. So I want you to take your reason, and if you have multiple, pick one, start with one. And what I want you to see is that it's a value statement that you're making. I don't want Santa to get credit. I don't want him to get the credit because gifts come from hard-earned money. That's actually a value statement. And it's not as clear when it's written in a negation, in a negative form. So whatever your reason is, it's often going to start from what you're against. And what I want you to do with that value statement is change it to what you are for. So a quick example is you're against cheating in relationships. You're for fidelity in relationships. So I'm going to ask you to flip it, and I'm going to flip those three right now. So the reason I don't want my children to think someone else gave them these gifts when it was my hard-earned money that I paid for them can become, when you switch it to a for statement, is I want my children to know the gifts came from me and my hard-earned money. The second reason is I don't want to lose trust with them by lying to them. So when you flip that around is I want to build trust with my children and demonstrate honesty. And the third reason is I don't want to break their hearts when they find out the truth. And if you flip that around, you can flip it around this way, is I want them to feel joy and magic during this time of year. So when you flip it around to a positive statement or what you're for, you get a better idea. It's clearer as to what your value is than when you talk about what you don't want. It's kind of like, oh, I hate chocolate. Well, I love vanilla. And when you focus on what you love or what you do want, it helps direct you and helps you make decisions about what to do about those traditions, how you want to carry them on in your family. And the next thing to get even clearer about what you actually value is to ask yourself why. So in the blog article, I talk about the hard-earned money, and I use that as an example. So on this podcast, I'm actually going to talk about the second reason is that I want to build trust with my children and demonstrate honesty. When you keep asking why, you're going to get to your deep, deep reason for doing something. And that is going to be so eye-opening. It might be a little scary because you might not realize, oh, that's my desire. But if I were to do this and I were to say, my reason was I want to build trust and demonstrate honesty. The reason, if I keep asking myself why when I did this exercise, was that I want them to come to me, I want them to see me as a trustworthy person and come to me with their problems. And that's my desire, is that I want my daughter to come to me and tell me things and see me as a source of, as someone who can help her. And that's my deep desire. And that can help reveal why it is you're making that decision. So when you dwindle it down to that reason, do you like that reason? Is that the value you want to pass down to the next generation? And that's the question that you can only answer. So when I look at the trust component and that I want to demonstrate honesty to my child, I like that reason. But here's the next part of that you can ask yourself to determine about what to say about Santa Claus, is to look at the purpose of the tradition, is to look at the purpose of Christmas for you, for your family. And so when I put those together, the reason for telling her that Santa Claus does not exist today, and I look at the purpose of Christmas inside our family, not the purpose for other people, but in particular, what is the purpose of this tradition within your family? And I look at that purpose, we have discussed it. Our purpose is it's a time to spend with family. That is actually our only purpose when it comes to this tradition. And so when I look at that and I look at, I want to establish trust and I want to demonstrate honesty. Is this the time that I want to do it? Is Christmas going to be the vessel in which I demonstrate honesty and try to establish trust? And the decision, and this is going to be different for everybody, and your purpose for Christmas, the purpose for your traditions are going to be different for everyone. I came to the conclusion doing this exercise was that I was going to not tell her that Santa Claus doesn't exist in present day. So she believes in Santa Claus. And I was not going to use Christmas as the opportunity to establish trust and be honest with her. Instead, I decided the other 364 days out of the year was going to be my opportunity to establish trust and demonstrate honesty. And that is how I came to a decision. When you do this exercise, every other person will come to a different conclusion. But it's a way to break down traditions that you want to change, that you want to maybe break a cycle or pattern in because you want to live your life with different values. And I'm going to wrap up the process. Write down why you want to change the tradition, this element of the tradition. What is it that you don't want? And switch it to what is it that you do want? And then take that statement and ask yourself why until you get down to a deep reason as to why you want to execute this value. And then decide, is this the time and place? Is this tradition going to be the time and place in which I get to exercise that value within my family? And again, it's in a blog article, so all of this stuff, I talk through the process and I use an example, and I'll have the link in the show notes. And next week, I'm going to talk about Santa Claus and race, because I am a person of color, and that is another tradition I kind of want to shake up. So I'll check back with you next week.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.